What's up, everybody? We're back again with another episode of Ask Chad Grassy Logic. Today, I'm here with my friend and Mayor of Grants, Erik Garcia. Thank you so much for joining me today.
What's up, Chad? Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Thank you for joining me. It's been a long time coming, actually. I've been wanting to have you on, the things I've been a part of in media when it comes to media stuff for a while. So it's great to get you on the podcast finally. Plus, being the mayor of Grants, and also you do own GrassRoots, which is, from the medical days. And we'll get on that more and everything. But I won't introduce yourself. Go ahead and, give your whole spiel introduction if you'd like for the people.
What's up? What's up, everybody? My name's Erik Garcia. I'm the mayor of Grants. I've been the mayor for 3 years, but I've been in the cannabis industry for almost 10 years now in the medical phase and dealing with all that shit. And just trying to survive in this market now. It's what the state or the industry has just put us in. So we're just trying to ride that wave and try not to sink. But anyways, no, it's been cool, man. I met you back in the day. It's got to be probably 8 years ago. I met you and we went and had lunch at, what was that restaurant in Albuquerque? They shut it down, Rock and Brew. And then from there, I've just been following you for a minute, and you've been doing some pretty cool stuff, and I'm just happy to be on this show with you. It's kind of neat.
Cool. I appreciate it, man. And yeah, thank you for joining me, and thank you for all the kind words and everything. And it's been a pleasure knowing you. It's always great to have conversations, and to talk about, not just the cannabis industry, but we could talk about a slew of other things too, especially when it comes to, like politics and the governor stuff. I mean, the governor stuff. Well, I mean, I guess sometimes we do talk about the governor, but about the mayor stuff and you being the mayor, because I met you before you became mayor. And I remember you just telling me, it's like, oh, I'm the mayor of Grants now. And I was like, what the hell? Which was, a pleasant surprise, which is great because we need more people in the cannabis industry to run in politics, to show people that, we do belong in this space as well, because most governments don't know cannabis, the community, the industry, anything about it, essentially. And then they go and try to govern it and make laws and rules. It helps with people like you being in place, especially as mayor, because you understand the cannabis industry. I mean, you've been around since before we were adult use here in New Mexico, or operating a business and everything. So you know it firsthand from all that and all that. So let's talk about, the business first. But before that, I usually like to ask my guests this question: what got you involved with cannabis in the first place, either as like a patient user or, even as the industry?
I I was I worked in the mines. I was an engineer for a lot of years at the coal mines up here, and in 2015 I left, and because I was just tired of working for corporate. They let me go. They was having a big cutoff, and they let me go, and I said I don't want to do that again. I busted my ass for this big old corporation, and then they just said laters. So I said, things to do, and this is 2015 when medical. I think there was only a few licenses I think maybe the first round of license had to barely come out. Maybe there was only 7 of them, and then oh no, there was probably 30 then, right? 2015. No.
I think there was about 13 or 14 at the time, maybe 15 at the max, because the second wave is what got us to the 30 and,
Okay.
coined the dirty 30 phrase.
So I was just looking, man. I was like, man, I hadn't smoked pot since I was in high school, and they used to drug test the shit out of us at the mine. So I hadn't touched cannabis in a long time, but I always thought it was cool because it's just back in the day we used to have a few plants here and there, but the medical thing was going around, and shit, man, I'll grow weed, shit, work for myself. I like to do gardening, and then it wasn't that easy. So anyways, it was a long battle to find the license. So it was a nonprofit. How they used to have it, they used to have a board of nonprofitees, and they had the license. So I got on the nonprofit, and I ended up buying the licensing off of them, and then they left, and then rec started. So it's been a ride, but just in general to get back into it, I just Googled it. basically. I need, I needed something to do. I needed something to do, and I was like, man, because we always used to talk about, because we used to drink a lot at the mine. Everybody drank, we drank,
Yeah.
but everybody would say, oh man, if we could just smoke pot, man, it'd be way better, because drinking is bad. Drinking is bad.
Yeah.
So so I said, man, I'm just gonna grow pot, because after I left the mine, that's the first thing I did was smoke some weed. Like, man, this feels so good. So, and then actually from smoking weed now, I haven't. I've been sober now for almost 9 years, just because of
Congrats.
that. Yeah, because alcohol was fucking up my life, and I wasn't gonna go down that path. And like you said earlier, people like me, to break that stigma of like, I can be a successful business person, I could run a city, but I use cannabis. My everyday, it's my lifestyle, right? And I don't say I use cannabis. It's not my and the medical side. Oh, it's my medicine. I said, because I view it as medicine is like you have to get that from the doctor, and they put you on something and it got worse and worse. That's kind of medicine. But cannabis is just a way of life. It's what I need, because it actually heals the brain, and it can put you in that rhythm of life of, hey, I need to be successful today. I need to do this. I need to do that. The stigma of it is that, people smoke it and then we're just all lazy and we don't do shit all day,
Yeah.
But anyways, sorry, I went off on a tangent there.
No. I mean, you're proving many points that we've been saying for many years. It's like, oh, you're never going to get anywhere being a cannabis user. It's like, oh yeah. It's like I got a friend who's the mayor of Grants and runs the cannabis industry. Is a cannabis user himself and stays pretty active. I see you stay active, physically and everything, as well too on top of it. And that's another assumption as they make, is that not only are we lazy and don't want to do anything, but we're fat slobs. When I think they even did a study and found out that most cannabis users are in better shape than most of the populace. And go ahead.
Now I've been running. Now I've been trying to do this study and trying to keep track of it. Is like cannabis and exercising actually really, really go hand in hand, because it, like, I run and I bike, but it puts you in that what they call it, that runner's high. When you start running and you just start, like, your brain starts to function in a different way. But when you start off, like whenever I go on a run, I'll take an hour before, I'll take 100 milligrams of cannabis. And then during the run, I'll start hitting it. And then, it helps the muscles, helps your brain think. And before you know it, you're like, wow, I'm already 2 miles in this run, and shoot, I'll just keep going. And then as far as the recovery of it, the cannabis, everything associated with that plant, it's actually helped my inflammation. And I could run harder, faster, longer now, because I've been using cannabis. And I smoke a joint before I run. And sometimes I'll smoke halfway through. So I'll take some, and then I take edibles. But I run 8 miles every other day, and I'm 45 years old. And I think cannabis, like it if used right, it's a hell of a motivator.
Yeah, 100%. And I like to tell people, especially my veterans, that cannabis is just a tool in your toolbox. That you have many tools that you can, pull from, when, be it PTSD, trying to stay in shape, et cetera, et cetera. Cannabis is just a tool. So you can't just rely on just that. So that's why it's, most of us do other things, because we realize that. But some of us do it naturally too. It's like, man, I want to go on a hike because, smoking and hiking sounds fun. Well, that's exercise, and maybe enhances the whole aesthetic of hiking for you. But for people like yourself, that's a huge benefit, and some people try to take ibuprofen, this and that, to do similar things, but you're going more of a natural route. And that's kind of the way I see it, as someone like, I'm a little older, I got my aches and pains, I've got the balm and I got the Tylenol, but you got the cannabis, we still have balms, the cannabis balms, and then we have the edibles and the smoke stuff. So I think it's great, when it comes to that. And I've heard many people, when it comes to running, it's like, helps me run all the time.
Who would have thought, huh? But anyways, Joe Rogan said it was safe, so I started doing it.
The mayor told me it was okay.
Right.
Awesome. So, we got the story of GrassRoots out of the way too, on top of that as well. let's talk about, changes in the industry, like since you have been around since the medical days, and it was the expansive time of the medical days too, as well. It was a different time for our medical industry, and it was, a little bit of a change, wasn't like a huge change like 2018, 19, but, it was a little bit of a change. What have you seen that's different from then to now? I mean, other than the obvious things, but what are some huge key differences that, you can look back and say, wow, that is a total difference, from then to today?
Shit, when I started, I mean, if I would have did shit right at the beginning, I don't think anybody ever does, right? But if I could go
Yeah.
back, oh man. But I mean, it was hard back in the day when we were the medical phase. It was 450 plants that we had,
Mhm.
and it had to be barcoded after 8 inches. After veg,
Mhm.
8 inches. And you're like, man, I don't know if that plant is gonna make it or not. And you would have DOH coming in here, and they would count all 450 of them, and they're like, damn, you it was very unfair. And that license that I had to pay back when, it was about $120,000. That
Yeah.
was crazy. So, and then we were only subject to or allowed to sell to, card holders.
Mhm.
And, that hassle, it was hard. People they wouldn't go get their medical cards. They still won't go get their medical cards now because, with the high tax that they're paying. It's the same way
Mhm.
back then, I but it's from going to 450 plants, and that had to be veg and flower, and being a nobody in the industry that didn't know shit, to try to grow. Like they were expecting you, well, if you're growing 450, you should get 2.5 pounds per light. I didn't, that
Yeah.
was that was hard. I was, and then it was embarrassing because, I was trying to compete with, some of these other guys in Pure Life, Alter Health, and, they got these badass grows. And, I took over this from a nonprofit from a guy who was, he was uh, a Vietnam veteran. He was an old
Mhm.
man. He was just an OG.
Yeah. Blackie. I remember him.
Yeah, he didn't build this business. Like, he didn't have a model to build this for the future. Like, he was just an OG guy, man.
Mhm.
He would deliver your pot on his Harley. And then he got paid in cash. That's how it
Yeah.
worked when it first started. And then when the
Mhm.
when the laws were changing and he couldn't keep up with, oh, we had BioTrack and they had all that shit, because back in the day you had a spreadsheet. When he said.
Yeah.
And so when I got this growth, it was just, there was nothing. I had to start
Mhm.
from scratch. I ended up getting a building in Grants that was run down to shit, and started from there. And I wasn't getting that 2.5 per. If I was, then uh, I would have been successful. But even back then, I was trying to build out a building, and everybody thought you were gonna get rich, but you get about 10 customers a day, because that's who had the cards.
Yeah.
It was hard in our little towns. And then I said, oh, I'm gonna go to Albuquerque. Oh, then I was competing with Albuquerque, and that was hard. But
Yeah.
if going back, like I said, going back, if I had the money, I'd have got me a badass grower, man.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the money. I was trying to do it myself. That's just how life is sometimes. You know,
Yeah.
business is hard.
No, it is. And the cannabis industry is growing cannabis. It isn't hard. Growing good, great, or amazing cannabis, that's where it gets hard. That's where the challenge really comes from. And then you go on to push yourself. Like, I want the 2-3 pound per light, results and stuff like that. And it's not easy, and you still want to try to keep the quality up as much as possible. And in these days, the consumer is starting to get smarter too. And people like myself educating them, that THC isn't everything and it's more of a sales gimmick. It's going to get harder for growers now, because now they got so used to, we're just going to push the plant as hard as it goes, and we're going to get it to as high as THC amount as possible. Now it's being told, well, now we're just trying to get a good product on the shelf. Like something smells good, looks good, smokes good, all around good product. And that might be hard for some people as well too. So I hats off to you, man, for you sticking around and sticking it out, and learning from your mistakes and everything. And maybe someone watching is going to take the mistakes that you made and go another way, and be like, okay, well, I'm gonna take that advice that he said, and I'm gonna get me a good grower. And maybe they're
Yes.
gonna do it in any way possible. It's like, I'm not gonna take a paycheck, it's all gonna go to the grower, whatever it may be. You may have helped somebody with that just that little tidbit right there. It's like, pay your grower. And that's huge tip, to be honest. And I agree with it, because you don't have a business in the cannabis industry if you don't have good cannabis or cannabis at all. So you need that grower. That grower is very important, and you can't just get any dude off the street. You got to be hand with the still, if you know what I mean. Ernie Key.
Regulators.
I've been waiting to do that one, Gino. Yeah, I've been waiting to do that one for a long time. But yeah, you got to know your shit, when it comes to growing, and you can learn. Of course, you can learn, but it's going to take time. I've met some dudes that got lucky. I've been doing this 2 years, and I'm like, what? And it looks like that? Wow. But then there's dudes like, I've been doing this 7, and I'm still messing up or whatever. But you're doing it, and you're sticking around. So what's a couple of things that you've done that's helped you stick around too? Maybe this is some tips that you can give other people too.
Oh shit. Well, when I first started, we were growing indoors. We had three rooms. We had 35 lights in each room, 40 lights. And then now, I mean, we were going through and having that expense, because back then, I was still selling pounds of pot to Ultra Health. That's how I got through the medical days. Yeah. Like I would grow indoors, and then I would sell to Ultra Health, because he would give me a chunk of money, because he was just looking for weed anywhere he can get it, because the industry back then, it was hard. They didn't have enough producers back then. We were all stealing from each other. So that was hard. So what was I saying? Going back to
how you stuck around.
Oh, how I stuck around. I'm sorry. Shit. No, then we ended up just growing outside now. So in the later years in this rec phase, I can go get some really top quality shelf flower for. I mean, it sucks. I know, because I'm a grower, but you're picking this up for $600-700 from really nice flower that back in the day I was paying $2,500 for. But then now the cost of price, what you're selling it for, it's what is it, $15 for an eighth? It's getting hard. So what we did is, I just started growing outdoors, and I've been really successful at that, growing outdoors, and we just grow in hoop houses and outdoors in the long season for the summer. And we grow in the ground. I get soil from this old man that's 82 years old in Arizona. He's been growing this soil, and it has earthworms in it, and it's just the most beautifulest soil you've ever seen. And this guy, he's an OG. They call him the plant whisperer. He's been growing marijuana. Well, he's 82 years old, 83, and he's one of those dudes, like, you just listen to him for like about an hour or two and just smoke a joint and just, wow, this guy has, because every year is your lesson, right? You have to learn every year, from year to year to year. But anyways, he grows his soil, so I buy soil from him, and I do all living soil, and I just use worm castings now, worm tea, as far as growing, and I get some really beautiful flower. It tastes beautiful. Sometimes I'm lucky enough to hit 26, 27, but I'm around that 23, 22 mark, and I'm happy. We sell it. It's tasty, but it's low costing, because it's cheap. Like, I was spending all kinds of money on nutrients when I was growing indoors, and man, it's expensive. And then if you don't know what the hell you're doing, it could get real more expensive. So I mean, if you're getting into this industry now, I don't know, find you a good grower, or start with just soil and hope for the best. Because unless you're like that guy you say, man, you just kick ass and have all the right stuff, cooling, you better have a lot of money if you're getting into this industry now. It's hard.
Yeah, it is. And thank you for that, because some people have gotten into this industry, and some are probably currently thinking about getting into this industry, and they don't realize the real struggles and what you're going to go through trying to make it. Because I remember back in the day when you were telling me about your how much it cost you, because you're running HPS back then, and back then that's really what everybody ran, even myself at home. LEDs haven't really improved to the point where they are in probably in the last 5 years or so. is really when they started to kind of gain more momentum and get better. So, I mean, that cost alone, just lighting costs,
It was like
is a,
10,000.
yeah, crazy amounts of money. And I'm glad that you figured out, what, let's go outside. Now they switched it up to mature plant count. Licenses are a lot cheaper, and the sun is for free. So why not? And here in New Mexico, we get a shit ton of sun. So I mean, you're winning in that sense. And don't worry about the lower THC numbers. Like I keep telling people, that's just a sales gimmick. At the end of the day, the 20 to 27, that's actually where I want to be. Even as low as like 17 is great. But if you have those terpenes numbers about 2, 3, 4%, oh man, you're sitting real pretty. 4%, I don't see that often, but 2 and 3, that's usually when you're going to run into a product that really tastes good. So I mean, you might just be providing a very good, tasty product at a very good price, especially even with the method that you're doing. So I appreciate that for the patience.
One of the things, like it's like cannabis is interesting. It's like that taste. It's like, wow. If you've been in it long enough, you can be like, wow, I can taste that, or I can taste that. When I first started, you're like, man, it all tastes the same to me. But now, it's you can tell, like, even when my buddies come and bring it, and they're trying all these different methods and stuff, and you're like, wow, maybe you can taste that, it's different. But the industry is changing, and yeah, it's hard. So now, from going from 450 plants, and they raising the plant count, and then they drop the prices, it really hurt us in as far as like the dirty 30, because I think in that time frame I paid almost $1 million in fees, and I only got to grow so many plants. And the state thought I like, they thought you could be successful because they had that myth that you were growing 2.5 pounds per plant. But guys like me, I got a license, but it doesn't mean I'm a badass.
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're
that
still trying
was,
to figure it out.
yeah, dude. Like they oh, you got a license, you must have deep pockets, and you must be the most baddest dude in the block. You should be making gazillions of dollars.
Yeah.
That was a bad interpretation. They should have been like, try to help us out in the medical side instead of try to bend us over. Like
Yeah.
I wish I could get that $1 million back, and so then at least I'll be one of the few of the dirty 30 that survived, because I've heard a few of them already dropped out.
Yeah. Quite a few have actually, dropped out since, legalization come around. And to be honest, it's from the bottom up, from corporate down to, the smaller companies, it's no discrimination, at least. But it's hard. And, that's something that we begged, and you heard me throughout the years. And you actually used to let us have our meetings at your shops. And that was that, and I appreciate that. That was huge for us. And I thank you to this day. Because that helped us with the fight and like trying to get things, the right way, because they needed to open licenses before legalization. And, even to today, I will say that they messed up by just not opening licenses right away. That's where all this out of the state weed came from. That's where all these other issues came from. Instead of having these businesses a little more established before we started, we said, hey, open the floodgates, it'll be fine, when we haven't even figured out how to do it on the medical side. This would have, taught us some lessons before adult use, but they refused to do it. Like they kept listening to, the big power players, essentially, that just did not want licenses open.
Right. I mean, I didn't understand, like, licenses open. Like, you're saying, like, as far as dispensaries or producers?
Well, back in the day, medical, when, they had to be the LMPPs, they were all in one kind of entity, essentially. So we were trying to get them to open the licenses back then to add more producers and more businesses, because we need it, especially down here in the South. Yes. And I'm sure you remember my whole thing back then is like, we need more in the South. We need more in the South. And, the South was always forgotten about. I mean, we still are. But these days it's a little bit better by the way that they've done it, because they've allowed licenses to open. But if they did that beforehand, before we went adult use, I feel like our transition from medical to adult use would have been a little more smooth. Don't get me wrong, we would have ran into issues just like anything, but I don't think the out-of-state cannabis would have been such as a hassle. The enforcement would have been a little bit easier to kind of figure out and navigate and stuff. I kind of feel with that one thing that they refused to do, it kind of shot us in the foot. It set us back a little bit. I won't say, years and years, but it did set us back a little bit. But we caught up really quickly. And I hope we can make the correct changes going further too, and not try to go backwards.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I remember when you were like, man, I wish they would open up licenses. And on my end, I was like, yes, they need to open up like a few every year, some producers, because we were, like I said earlier, we were stealing from each other.
Yeah.
Now I have all these relationships with a bunch of producers, and it's like we're like a little network now, but that's how it should have been back then, because
Yeah.
my little network was just me. Like whatever I grew was whatever I could sell and whatever I could send off to make extractions with it, right?
Mhm.
Whatever product, because I couldn't go buy a liter of oil. It would cost you a gazillion dollars back then. Now a liter of oil, you can find it for $1,500.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah, it is.
The state devalued the cannabis business so bad by not doing what you were advocating a long time ago, a little bit at a time. So even me, like, oh, cool, I met Freddie, I met Sarah, I met this one, instead of like the Dirty 30, because already the Dirty 30 already had its own little clique.
Yeah.
And it was hard. It was hard, and I was young and I had no money, so I wasn't a part of any of them. To get in there, there was a few people like that I got into at the beginning. They were awesome, but I was never rubbing elbows with Pure Life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I appreciate you being a part of the community and everything, and being grassroots, as your business says, because that's really how it was. And you saw how it was for us, being an operator yourself, because they had their little clique already, like, oh, we want to do this and this. And, for a while they were pushing to have no home grows. They wanted to get rid of home grow for a while. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? And like, they're trying to say, oh, it's only because we're the only ones who should be authorized to do it because it's dangerous to grow that marijuana, and this and that, and we're the only ones qualified, and all kinds of other stuff. And they'd be like, well, we pay all this money for a license. And I'm like, yeah, because you sell it. We don't sell it. We're not allowed to. There's a huge difference between the two. So it got to that, and I digress on that. Like, I get really touchy when people try to attack home grows. But I really do appreciate your experience. Like, you went through some shit, and a lot of people don't even realize it. Like that. This business was a small business back then, because we were so used to these dispensaries mostly being like corporate or like bigger money people and everything. And there was a few, like you and Organtica, I kind of feel were one of the few, and Mother Earth Herbs was locally more owned, and a couple like that. But it was sad to see that they kept so many of those people out, the bigger guys, without having the say of what we should do and shouldn't do. Because we probably should have added 5 to 10 every year to the leading up to legalization before we open the floodgates and said, all right, state, figure it out now. At least we would have had a little bit more of a foothold in, and kind of able to figure it out. But hopefully we weren't learned from our mistakes, and now it's kind of like, well, we need to figure out this plant situation. Some producers have 54,000 plants, and to me that's a little ridiculous.
No shit.
Yeah, 54. The state reports, the plant counts for all the establishments, and it tells you who. And one of them has 54,000, some 10,000. It goes all the way down, of course, but the highest is 54. And that's one of the reasons why the price is so high. I mean, it's so low, excuse me, and it's dropped is because there's too much on the market, and there's already something set in place in the Cannabis Regulation Act to fix that, and that's the CCD needs to adjust the plant counts. Essentially almost every year, every other year, once the demand changes. You have a supply and demand. Well, our supply is higher than our demand now, so we need to figure that out. And it's not getting rid of retailers, because that's not how you fix a supply issue. You fix a supply issue from the source. And the CCD is, very afraid of getting sued again because they lost against Duke at the very beginning of adult use, because they only limited the plants, I think, to 10,000. And so the emergency rule, the 20,000, that came from that lawsuit. And now I don't even think they're doing that, because obviously people have gotten more than 20,000. They have 54,000, et cetera, et cetera. So they haven't done this. They've done this only with the plant counts, and have blamed everything else but the real issue. And that's kind of like where I'm kind of confused. I'm like, why are we betting on ruining businesses versus just lowering the plant count, because we've seen this in Canada and other places around the world and the nation, that once you scale up to a certain point in cannabis, it becomes you don't make any profit. You start to
Yeah,
lose more money than you're generating. There's
we're
a sweet
starting.
spot. Yeah, exactly. And you've learned that yourself. You've seen it firsthand. Like scalability and trying to scale things and trying to work with cannabis in higher numbers. And so once you get to that 54,000, 20,000, plant count, you're not getting quality done. It's not quality product getting in the market, and then the price goes down, the quality goes down. And that's kind of where we're at right now today. Now, we do have a lot of good quality cannabis on the market. Like, the quality cannabis that we have on the market now is significantly better than the medical days. But we could get rid of a lot of bad actors and bad product on the market by lowering the plant count some. And who knows, maybe the guys that are growing these huge plant counts that are, just doing it to get numbers up, maybe they'll start growing better cannabis if they have lower plant counts. Because I've used this example before. There was a company in Canada, and they had, like, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of square feet of grow canopy space or whatever in Canada. Huge grow. Well, they went out of business, and they decided to change to growing tulips or something similar, or something, because that was more profitable than growing cannabis. Because they couldn't grow it at scale at the quality that you need for human consumption. When it's a flower for decoration, you can pretty much put whatever you want on that to make it look pretty. And so they found that, yeah, there's a threshold, but certain people are figuring out the hard way what that threshold is.
We're going back to saying, like, I think you had mentioned one time that you're thinking about running for city council.
Yeah, so this is something that people have asked me before, but I actually was asked officially a couple months back about running for city council here in Las Cruces. I have thought about it a lot. I debate a lot, but I have so much that I'm working on to get going now that I think I'm going to wait for that. But yeah, I was so honored to be even asked to run for city council. But I think for me right now, I'm going to have to wait until the next round, because I'm trying to get a business going, all this other stuff. So I'm like, it's hard enough for me to keep all this stuff going now, that adding running a campaign isn't going to really help me out right now. But I think in the future, I think I might, because like I said before, people like us in the cannabis industry do need to get more involved in government and in politics. And, I've talked to you about it before, and you made a lot of good points, that, being in the position that you are, and, this is a great way we can segue over into the conversation about you being mayor, of Grants as well too. You have, more of a direct line to people who are important because of your position. When something is wonky in the industry or wonky in your area, you can be like, hey, I need a meeting with the governor, and it's not for something for you, it's for your community. But it just so happens that if it happens on the cannabis side, you can say, oh, look, no, governor, this is actually how it needs to go, because I'm America's cannabis friendly governor or mayor. And, I have the experience and know why. And that's crucial, and that's key. So, I mean, how has being the mayor of Grants really improved cannabis for your community in the area?
Well, I was going to go back to real quick, is like,
yeah, my bad.
The conversation of like the pathway, and we're talking about being someone in political figure to getting into where you have all these senators and representatives are trying to make all these decisions, and none of them have a clue on what the industry machine, how it works, right? On how you have your succeeds and your failures, but they just look at the huge dollar amount that dude that's growing 5,400 plants, that he's making a bunch of money, and they're just putting that across the board, right? But they're not looking at, these legislators are really not looking at, like, hey, you guys are really messing up mom and pop shops, man. You think you're just because your revenue is still doing this, but on your economic side, you're hurting people that thought they could get in this business by taking out their 401k, mortgaging their house because they love the plant, right? Or they started this 20 years ago, and they're trying to struggle just to keep their business alive, but they're so focused on that dollar. You know, it's you can focus on that dollar. They just did it wrong. So
Yeah.
getting like I was asking about city council, like people that know this industry, God, I wish the state or they would kind of find a path to leadership and to fight for, you know, this industry, because it's not going to go away, and it has to get better before we start turning into selling tulips or whatever you said that's more profitable.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great point, because, you know, we don't want to get to that point, and we want to prevent people from getting to that point. Like, I don't want you guys to go away. You know, like, I just want you to know that, you know, growing hundreds of thousands and millions of plants is just not profitable at a certain point. You know, like the threshold is probably well under the 10,000 number as well too. You know, I'm thinking once you start going, and I'm being generous with this, even 5,000, it starts getting harder. You know, and I know how it is, you know, in that thousands of like 5,000, that's still a lot. You know, like, as someone who grows cannabis, you know how even a couple of hundred is, you know. And so when you start thinking about tens of thousands, in my mind, I'm like, that is a mess. And I know that those plants are not getting touched at all,
No.
you know, or very rarely, you know. And that's how you figure out what issues you have sometimes, is you're touching every plant. Because sometimes, you know, you can't visually just glance at a grow and see the issue. Sometimes you got to get close, you got to look at it, examine it, lower nodes examine. Because sometimes if you have a plant that's showing, you know, male parts, sometimes it doesn't show on the top, it's going to show on the lower bottom, on the lower nodes and everything. So I mean, getting up and close and personal is going to save you time, money, and it's going to make you more money in the end, because you're going to have a better product. But, you know, maybe we'll see what happens, you know. And I hope our legislators listen to, you know, people in the industry, people who are in the industry, and also in our government. You know, I hope they do listen to you guys when the time comes, because they're going to make the wrong decision, and the people that are essentially screwing everyone else over by growing too many plants are just going to continue to do it, and then no one else is going to be able to benefit. And I'm talking about them trying to close licensing, like for retail and stuff like that. Because if they do that, we're going to end up with other issues, you know, than we really think of right now. And this always happens with government. They always try to fix an issue, but when they do that, they create like 7 more,
Yeah,
you know,
for
on
sure.
top of it. Yeah. So, you
You
know,
were saying no, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, please, please.
No, you were saying that like my position where hopefully I can talk to some people on the higher end of, you know, the state level. And one of my being in this position, you know, I've talked to Governor Grisham a few times, and she knows me. We're friends, and one of the next things that I want to talk to her about is, like, uh, I think cannabis is an amazing plant. And one of the biggest things that we deal with in our state, that I see it all the time. I've been seeing it for 10 years now. People coming into my shop, you know, they're on meth, they're using fentanyl, they're alcoholics. And I've seen it firsthand, and I've had a bunch of success stories where I give people cannabis, you know, and try to get them off of alcohol or get them off meth. And I have so many friends now that I've helped them through the years because I gave them free cannabis. Because I'll tell them, hey, did you? They'll come in, hey, how's the sobriety? Oh, it's not too good. Well, you ain't gonna get a free joint today, but he'll buy one, you know, or she'll buy one. But then, hey, sobriety's good, you know. Hey, I'll give them a free joint, and you just see them. And then a few times I've hired them, you know, just to do stuff for me here and there, just so they try to get another, you know, a little path forward, you know. But cannabis got them there. So trying to know the governor, and this is another touchy story with me, is I went to rehab in 2020, right, during
Oh, I
COVID.
didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was losing my shit,
Mhm.
and I didn't I hadn't drank alcohol, and like I said, I'm 9 years sober, but I was already 5 years sober then. But it was I was a new counselor. I was trying to survive this business, and you know, it's
Mhm.
2020. That was a really fucked up year, you know. And so I was done, man. I was really done, and I was gonna go. and my wife saved me. I was done, and she saved me, and I got off the edge, and I checked myself into rehab, and I went to a rehab, and I learned a lot over there what rehab is kind of like. 30 days they take your phone away. I went to a really nice one though in the mountains, and it had really good food. They had good people to shock your chakra and stuff. But it was crazy. And during rehab, I met a range of people from a grandpa to a nurse to everyday people that were suffering from mental health, right? And that was
Hmm.
crazy because back then you didn't talk about it, right? I was
Yeah.
all scared. I thought no one's gonna talk about mental health, and I'm a Generation X kid. We our our escape was alcohol. You
Yeah.
know, so we because if you didn't have feelings, you just drink
Hmm.
them away.
Yeah.
So like it was really hard for me to go to rehab, but I my wife, I wanted to save my family, myself, because I wanted to be here tomorrow. So, anyways, going through rehab, I learned a lot. Like, but most of those people that were in there, man, we would talk about weed. We would talk about, man, I wish I had a joint, just to, and I got them. I knew. I was like, yeah, it helps you clear your mind. It helps you think. Positive thinking. If you have positive thoughts and you smoke a little weed, it actually works with your cannabinoid system and actually gives you more positive thoughts. And it just makes you more functional. And everybody in there was like, yeah, weed, weed, weed. And they've done their circle of life. They started with weed, and then they did all their shit, and then they ended up using weed again. They should have never done that middle part. They should have just
Hmm.
stayed on weed. And people don't understand that weed is not the gateway drug. You know,
Yeah.
that's stupid. So, but anyways, talking back to Governor Grisham and rehab is, man, I one of my dreams. Oh, it would be badass. I want a 30-day rehab place in Grants, New Mexico, in the mountains. But it's you called it one time. We talked about it one time. It was reefer rehab. Remember that?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I do
Yeah.
actually.
So we were talking about reefer rehab, but something like that now of, man, if I could just get to sit down with the governor and just tell her my business plan and how we can help people, because the everyday of what we're doing now to help people on the mental health side, the cycle is just going like this, you know,
Hmm.
and I don't know, I people need to be saved. I was saved,
Yeah.
and for good reason, and there's a lot of people just like me. So, anyways, being the mayor, hopefully meet the governor, hopefully, change some people's lives through cannabis.
And I hope so too. There's another success story here in Cruces that can corroborate with that. Is they do essentially what you've been doing, and they've noticed that because they're in a really shitty part of town. Like shootings and killings happen all over, like in front of the dispensary all the time. Essentially, it's kind of fucked up. But the good side of it is they've seen that some of the people that are coming out on fentanyl or on meth, they've they've not allowed, they've helped them get off of those. And now they're like, just using cannabis or, using it as a way to get away from it. Like you said, sometimes they'll have a day where they're not sober or something, but it's them getting to the mindset where they're realizing I need to get off of this. And that's the first step of someone who with an addiction to fix themselves, is them saying, I need to do this, because that's the only way that they're going to get off of drugs, or a substance abuse problem of any sort, is them doing it themselves, saying, no, 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 no more. And, it's hard for some people, and, it's hard for anybody, but, cannabis has helped a lot of people. And, they're even telling me, is like, yeah, these people come in and I've watched them through months, and like, they've improved so much, because the dispensary's been there, not even, I don't even think a year yet. And they said, we've seen these people come in and change for the better. They'll go and pick up trash in the parking lot, and then they'll work for them that way and stuff like that, and do little things like, you're explaining. And, I think that's another way to give back to the community too. And for us to get back to this whole community thing, because that's the key component that we're missing, is community. Like we're so reliant on police to fix our issues, and government to fix our issues, when for the longest times it was up to us. There was no government, before, we came up with it. It was up to us to figure it out. And of course, little tribes or whatever, but, it was community. And when you do things like that, it improves a community. I mean, it's small things, it's small things at a time. And who knows, maybe in 5 years that area will be cleaned up because this one thing started the domino effect, and that was showing a little bit of compassion. You know what I mean,
Yeah.
to the fellow human beings.
The hard part about cannabis is that if the government wanted to do something, we have a 20-acre greenhouse here in Grassy, New Mexico. They wanted to do this big old grow to supply cannabis oil to pharmaceutical, and they went and they spent like probably 10-12 million dollars fixing it back up, and it's just sitting now. If the government wanted to do something, like they should fire something up like that, because people who need those types of things, like, hey, like they need cannabis on a regular basis, it gets expensive. You just don't give it away.
Yeah.
And that's why I would always give it to the people that were coming in, and I knew what they were doing with it, because they were trying to wing themselves off as something. So I was always a giver. And to help them out. But like the government on that side, if there was a facility or treatment where, yes, we want to introduce cannabis as your treatment, but like there's got to be a way to pay for it,
Yeah.
because it's expensive. I mean, growing
Yeah.
cannabis it's expensive, and I wish I had the biggest grow in the world so I can help so many people, but I don't have the biggest money, the biggest pockets in the world.
Yeah. And,
But
maybe
the
maybe in
government can
time.
help out.
Yeah, the government could, and they're making a lot of money off of cannabis right now. So, there's a lot of, subsidy stuff they could do on that front, because you're talking about Bright Green, right?
Yeah, bright
That's
green.
over there. Yeah. I've been trying to get a hold of them for like 3 years now, Gino. Yeah. Yeah, since the beginning. I'm like their crazy ex-girlfriend, like I call them all the time. I email them all the time, tag them in my posts all the time. They have not got back to me once.
I'm the mayor, and they still haven't talked to me.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you, have you been able to get a hold of them?
No, man. When that place was, because it started up in '98, and I've always walked through it through the years that has been torn down. It's a badass facility. Oh, it's every grower's dream. And then probably like 2 years ago, I did a tour of it. That guy wasn't there. Just a buddy that I know there gave me a tour. Oh my God, it's every grower's dream to have a facility like that. It's amazing. And then it just went boop. No one's
Wow.
done that. And that dude, I don't even know. So I would love to work out a deal, because like he's gonna have to buy water, and we sell water, City of Grants. We'll take some cash.
Yeah. There you go.
And you're going to provide jobs, because growing weed, it's not hard, but it's labor intensive. So there's labor force all over the place for that. And then you're going, on the flip side, you're going to be giving that stuff to someone who actually are doing a study or need it, and we're going to be changing the world with that place. But it's a ghost town over there.
That's unfortunate, because I try to keep as much up to date with it that I can. So on their website, they'll have updates. And the last that I had an update from last year, I need to check now again, is they were going around the globe looking for international investors. And they also applied for another DEA exemption for other drugs like ibogaine, peyote, psilocybin, psilocin, et cetera, et cetera. So it seems like they're trying to expand, but I don't know if it's in the way that we're wanting it to expand. You know what I mean? To me, it seems like some corporate stuff is going on, because I mean, they're having like investor parties. They're inviting people from like Taiwan and Asia, key places in Asia and the Middle East, to invest and stuff. So to me, it's not looking good for us on that front. One, they won't talk to us. Two, the only updates we get are them just doing corporate America stuff in our state, essentially. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, it is. So we'll see what happens in the future with them. I hope one day they do open up and give New Mexicans a bunch of jobs. I don't hope that they shut down, because that would be huge for us.
It's
but
nice.
Yeah. And oh man, I wish I went with you that time. Hit a brother up.
Oh man, I'm just mom and pop, and that place is awesome. I'm like, wow, I wish they would do something with it.
Yeah, me too. And it's unfortunate. But let's get on to the next topics that we have at hand. Is there anything else that you want to add or say before we jump into the next couple topics before we end the show?
No, that's cool, man. Sorry, I went off topic.
No. These are great topics, and to be honest, a lot of these conversations needed to happen. And who knows, maybe some government people, within our government will see this and say, well, state legislature wise, Gino's looking at me. He is. I'm like, state legislature. We'll see this and have a realization that there's other people they need to be talking to, not just the people with the money. Real people that have been in this for a while. So anyway, we're going to jump into our next conversation. We're going to talk about another New Mexican company. We actually mentioned this a couple times through our conversation. It looks like Ultra Health sued the IRS, and it's over 280E. And I know what y'all are thinking. It's like, oh, again, they're suing the government again. And to be honest, why not? That's what the courts are there for. The legislatures are there for writing the laws, and the courts are there to interpret. So that's what's happening right now is they're interpreting this law, and they're interpreting really what qualifies for 280E and not. So let's give some background for this. If some of you don't know, in the cannabis industry, it's federally illegal. It's a Schedule I substance. So that means that we can't get any taxes. We can't claim taxes. We can't get deductions and stuff like that through the IRS. And then, to be honest, you end up paying probably about 40% plus on your taxes when it comes to that at the end of the day. Now, there's been a lot of debates and a bunch of companies that have tried to attack this. Of course, a bunch of people in our government already feel that taxation is theft. So, you have that crowd to start with. But then you have the cannabis industry who, people think that we're making money hand over fist when at the same time when they're thinking that we're getting overcharged, overtaxed, and we're overregulated. So what does that mean? That means that we're just paying way too much than we should already. That you go to something like the 280E, and that alone can take a business out. Like, I know cannabis dispensaries just in Sunland Park and in the surrounding area. That's the reason why they went out of business, is they weren't paying their taxes because they probably weren't saving it, or they just didn't realize how much in taxes they really had to pay, because it's a lot. So I digress. In this lawsuit, it's called New Mexico Top Organics, which is Ultra Health, versus Commissioner of Internal Revenue. They're going to be suing for 3 fiscal years. That's 2018, 2019, and 2020. I don't know why they didn't name any, consecutive dates, after that, like 21 to now. But these are the ones that they're doing. The IRS says that they owe $8.4 million in taxes plus $1.7 million in penalties. But Top Organics turned around and said that actually we overpaid, and the IRS owes us $2.7 million, or $2.76 million. So now we're in a big pickle here. And the argument that Top Organics has is that 280E shouldn't apply to them because they're medical cannabis. In the state of New Mexico, medical cannabis is legal. And since our state Supreme Court has ruled that, that's one of the reasons why. And also they added that last year, HHS did state that cannabis does have medical benefits, and also the fact that the government's, well, I wouldn't say that they're currently trying to reschedule, but their efforts of trying to reschedule cannabis from 1 to 3 is another reason why. They also mentioned that the IRS ignored millions of documented costs of goods sold, even after the audit agent initially acknowledged those costs were substantial. I can't talk today. Substantial. Thank you. Thanks, Gino. Appreciate that. Sometimes I get stuck on a word. And so what they're trying to argue is pretty much that they don't owe the IRS the money because they paid them their money, and they overpaid. So I don't know what's really going to happen with this. To me, I don't think they're going to win it. Just like, recently Top Organics sued Blue Cross Blue Shield and a couple other insurance companies, trying to force them to pay for medical cannabis. And it didn't work. The judge actually dismissed the case. Now, during the legislature, there was a bill that went through, didn't get very far, that was trying to do the same thing, trying to get the insurance companies to pay for medical cannabis in New Mexico. So my thing is, I think they're just trying to throw at something that'll work. We're like, where's the spaghetti going to stick? And if it works, it works. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, Duke has been very successful in suing the state, during the medical days. I'm sure you remember too. He sued them quite a few times, and I think Sacred Garden sued them, a couple times too. And they were both pretty successful. So we'll see what happens. Top Organics is usually, putting lawsuits like this in, and they're not really damning to the industry whenever they do it. So I don't really usually have an issue with it. Of course, a company is going to try to make their money, with it one way or another. But this wouldn't hurt anybody if it goes through. I mean, if they don't have to pay 280E, that means even cheaper costs for the patients and the consumer at the end result at the end of the day, and they can pay more people, and it snowballs. So what's your thoughts so far, on this lawsuit and everything? I know it's a lot of information, but I just wanted to make sure I got it all out.
Yeah, like you said, I Duke, he's been pretty successful. I mean, if he's doing it, I mean, he probably feels like he has. I mean, he feels like he's going to win. I mean, he's been in the game a long time, and I'll give him that credit. And he's a business guy. So if this lawsuit goes through, then everybody overpaid those 3 years then.
Mm-hmm. And I can see why the IRS wouldn't want this case to go through, because it's a fuck ton of money that they would owe everybody in the whole nation, essentially.
And the whole nation or the whole state.
So I believe from what I was looking at that this is a federal case, so it would be a federal ruling, and so it'll apply to federal tax codes around the nation. So, and I don't know if this would be automatic or if they'll have to, file something. The government loves bureaucracy. But from my understanding, what I'm looking at, if he does win this would lead to other companies also suing or also putting in to, get some money back from the IRS after they do an audit, because they overpaid in taxes. So we'll see what happens. They did list, quite a few reasons. A couple of them I'm like, but others I'm like, oh, maybe. But they did sue, I guess, back in end of 2024. So I don't know how this slipped through the cracks for me, because I missed this. There's really not much on news for this, for the article wise, but it's out there and it's a real lawsuit and everything. So we'll see what happens. There's no current updates of what's going on with this, so who knows? But lawsuits like this sometimes take years to hear a ruling.
Federal, huh? Yeah, it's gonna be a minute.
Yeah, I think Brian Crum, he had sued the federal government, the DEA, and it took like 10 years for him to finally get the court hearing at the final end of the day. And of course, the DEA won, but sometimes that's how long it takes. Yeah, Brian Crum. They recognize that name.
Yeah, he was on the board of GrassRoots when I first got involved. He's been around a minute. Oh wow.
Yeah, he has. Yes. Yeah, he. I had the pleasure of knowing him too, and seeing all the work that he does and everything throughout the years of advocacy. And it's not a terrible lawsuit, suing the DEA.
Yeah, when he told me that this was probably 10 years ago, I said, "Yeah, you're crazy, man." but he's a cool dude.
Yeah, he is. He's a cool dude. I like him. He's a fellow veteran and everything. So hope he's doing well. Haven't heard much from him lately, but he's one of the old school cannabis warriors from back in the day. So I thank him for his fight. But that's everything I have for that one. We'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated when I get more information. Now that this is on my radar officially, I can go into the little system I have and check on the case every now and then. So when there's an update, even if the news isn't updating, I can just post the articles and the official documentation and stuff like that. So I'll keep you guys updated. But anyway, we're going to get to our last and final topic update thing. It's going to be kind of a 2-in-1, because as I'm recording this right now, Texas Legislature is in their special session. And as I said before, I'm keeping y'all updated for a couple of reasons. One, I'm located in southern New Mexico, and El Paso, Texas is right there. So a lot of the people in our industry and that fight for our industry are from Texas. And two, whatever Texas does will directly affect us. It's about 50% of our sales come from Texas. And if you look at places like Sunland Park, it's like damn near 95% of the sales come from Texas down there. So that's the reason why. And it's important that we know what's going on, because we have to know how to react to this. So right now, the Texas Legislature, they beforehand, he had passed SB3 during the regular session. The governor vetoed it, and he's calling for regulation. But it looks like during the special session, the legislature is going for the same thing of a complete ban, using propaganda, anti-cannabis rhetoric, and of course outdated data and studies to back their claims up, as well as fear-mongering tactics of having the parents that were affected, et cetera, to have them as witnesses and stuff like that. So as I'm speaking right now, they are, I believe, I don't know if it's on the floor, if it's in a committee, but SB5, the bill that's banning, has been being heard all day. I was watching this morning as I was writing the guide, and they went on recess right before I started the show. So as I'm speaking right now, I think they are back and they can reconvene. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what it's saying. I have no clue what the progression is. So if you want true up-to-date information on that, follow my socials. As soon as I know, y'all will know. But also make sure you guys follow those Texas advocates, because they're the ones on the ground keeping you guys as up to date as possible. So there's that. It's pretty much, I see it passing the Senate. I don't know how well it's going to do in the House. So we'll see. But I do believe that the House has a version as well too. But there's other bills that have been introduced. There's actually a real legalization bill that was introduced in Texas. I don't see that going anywhere, and a couple of other regulatory kind of bills. And of course, they're dealing with other stuff too, not just hemp cannabis over there. So we'll see what happens. They did, and another reason why I think that it is going to pass, because the sponsor of it, Senator Perry, he was in there for a couple hours just hammering the way on the anti-cannabis stuff. A couple of other senators did debate him and, question a couple of his, things that he said, which is great. But at the end of the day, he introduced an amendment, and the amendment passed 20-9. And it was just making the bill even worse. And so that tells me that it's more than likely going to pass the Senate in Texas the way it is, and if not, get worse as it goes. So we'll see what happens. It doesn't look good for Texas right now, but the advocates tell me that their saving grace may be in the House. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. And like I said before, right now, as we're talking, I have no clue what's going on. So after the show, I'm going to update you guys, but you're probably going to see the update before you get told about the update, because it's going to air tomorrow. I know this is all kind of confusing in the timeline thing here, guys, but it is what it is. So that's the little Texas quick update. I just want to update you guys on that. But the real update I wanted this to come from, that one of Kentucky's most powerful senators actually saved the hemp industry federally. But before I do that, I actually want to get your 2 cents on the Texas thing. I forgot to get that. So what's your thoughts on Texas banning, hemp and everything?
Texas, down the Sunland Park, I was going to be like my 5th store, I think, when I was starting. This was before 2020, maybe 19. And we were looking for a location there, and we had found something, and we missed out on an opportunity, obviously, because it didn't work out, and but because Texas is flooding down there. It's where all the big revenues coming in from New Mexico. The hard part about where politics now, this is where it gets ugly. This is where you got people lobbying in the New Mexico side, going to Texas, telling these guys, don't legalize it because it's going to hurt our industry, blah, blah, blah. But then, there's people just like us on Texas, why can't they have cannabis? It's just cannabis, it's crazy. So yeah. It's a ticking time bomb. You're going to see a lot of revenue, people flooding the gates over there. But once Texas opens up, they're going to stay on their side.
Yeah, 100%. And I've already talked to some, people that work in Sunland Park that are from El Paso, Texas, and they told me, if Texas legalizes it, dude, I'm just going to stay here. And I can't blame them. I don't blame them one bit. I wouldn't be mad at them. I wouldn't talk shit. It's not my fault that you live in such close proximity to New Mexico that you're capable and able of working in our industry and getting that experience and then able to take it to your state. Because New Mexicans have been doing that for I don't know how many years. I don't know how many of my friends have said, oh, I moved to Colorado and I had experience. I moved to California and I got this experience. I was in Michigan for a while and I got this cannabis experience. I mean, we do it all over the place. So I'd be a hypocrite if I said, oh, you asshole, you got experience here and you left. Well, good. Because on a national scale, we're going to need people like that. You know what I mean? It's not going to be state to state at the end of the day. It's going to be state to state competing against the whole nation against each other. It's not going to be the just mom and pops in your state battling it out. So we'll see what happens. It's one of those things, in Texas that's unfortunate, but fortunate for us. I just always feel for my veterans when they lose access. And that's one thing that I go back to is, if it's one thing that We make money. For me, my heart goes out to my veterans who have found relief in whatever product that it was, hemp, D8, whatever. I just hope that the governor, if this bill passes, doesn't sign it. Because they'll be able to keep their industry the way it is and nothing changes for us. We get to continue making money in here in New Mexico the way that we are for, who knows how long. But if it changes a little bit, it might change, but my veterans at least get some relief. And, my veterans don't just live in New Mexico. I served with dudes from all over the nation. And if not, different parts of the world. And so why shouldn't they have cannabis? Why would we want to keep that from someone? So
it's
that's
just weed, man. We could buy alcohol and go end our life with going to Smith's down the street and get a fifth of something and just drink it till we pass out or die. That's crazy. It's just weed, man. It's the perception of what people have of it is it's the ones that don't like it. I mean, you really think of it wrong. And sometimes, even like what we view the movies, like that, it's not like that. Like, we don't hallucinate. Like, what's going on there? Then the people of the non-believers of the plant are like, oh, that's how it makes you feel. I said, no, not really.
Exactly.
But it's just weed, man. And why every state, why are we battling so hard to have weed, man? It's been around forever. And there's no stories of, oh man, that guy OD on weed the other day, man, stay away from that shit.
Yeah. And it just gets blamed, when they find it in someone's system, it stays in someone's systems for days, if not weeks on end after use. So it doesn't mean that they were intoxicated at the point or they suddenly became, high out of nowhere because it's in their system. It's just one of those compounds that, sticks to your fat cells, and more fat cells you got, the longer it sticks around, So it's just one of those things, it just gets the blame, even if it's their name. I see it all the time. It's like, well, look at this statistic. And I'm like, yeah, but he also had heroin, alcohol, and meth in his blood. How are you going to blame cannabis on that one, buddy?
Yeah, he was probably using weed to get off of that shit.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's why the weed was in his system. If anything, he was trying to making an effort. He fucked up. That's all you got to say about it.
No one that's using cannabis wants to OD. I mean, have you taken too many milligrams? You're like, damn, that was too much, and you started throwing up. No one wants to do that. We try to find that sweet spot. No one.
Mm-hmm.
And then too, like when you eat too much THC, you're like, I've done it. I'm like, oh shit. Oh, you don't feel good. Like, no one wants to feel that way. And no one wants to do that on a regular basis. Weed is not. But you recover faster than alcohol is. So it's just ride the ride for an hour or two, and you'll feel fine. Everyone thinks, oh, you OD'd. You didn't OD. I mean, I don't know. It bugs me.
No, me too. And they always try to compare it, to harder drugs, and stuff like that. I'm like, it's not like that at all, man. Like, I've never blacked out when on cannabis and not remembered what I did the next morning.
Never.
Yeah. If I'm asleep and I don't remember what I did and half asleep, then blame it on my sleep.
Right.
So, but anyway, we'll continue on the conversation, and I'll give you guys the hemp update on the federal side. So Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, he successfully removed some language from essentially the farm bill that's going through, Congress right now, that they need to do every few years to update it. And that's how we got legal hemp in the first place in 2018. There was some language in there that will essentially ban hemp altogether. And Rand Paul stepped in and actually said, this would directly hurt my hemp farmers of my state and my constituents if you guys did this. This language would do nothing but take out about, I think, like 95% of operators in my state. And I am not going to stand for it. And luckily, he was able to get that removed from the bill, and it's going on without that, which is great. However, there's a House version that's going through right now that has the language in it still. What that means, though, is that since now that they don't match, they'll have to go back to one to the other. So what that does is kind of throws things out of sync. Now, what that bill has to either do is change to match that bill, or it's going to just have to kind of stay separate and then figure out what wins at the end of the day and what doesn't make it or dies in committee or on the floor. or even makes it that far. So we'll see. I hope the House version doesn't get that far, because the Senate version, I like the fact that they took that out. But we'll see. Like these days with our federal Congress, it's one of those weird things. I have no clue what the hell's going to happen.
They're all on vacation now. Anyway.
Yeah. And this all happened right before they went on their little vacation and stuff like that. So they'll be back in what are they? October or September, something like that. But I do know that the fiscal year ends September 30th. So sometime after that is when I think they're going to be back. So we'll see what happens. But, before, we end the show, what are your thoughts on those few things? That's actually kind of big, a huge save from Congress, really, getting that language removed, at least on the Senate side.
I don't know too much about that hemp stuff, man. I don't know, but I only know that they're probably screwed up there in Congress or somewhere. I mean, they're not listening to people like us anyway, so they're going to screw it up.
Yeah, and we see it on the state level, and that's a good point, because like I listen to them and I'm like, oh my God, I really wish you guys would listen to us. But I see the people that are talking to them and I'm like, oh, I wonder why. Because the people that are over there, are telling them the wrong shit and not pushing the right things, because I can't get to DC. I know it's hard for you to get to DC. Most of us in New Mexico can't even afford to get to DC, let alone, stay the night. So, like, we're left with leaving emails, and we know our congressional representatives in the state, they're for cannabis. So it's like, well, can you convince your fucking friends? Help us out here. Like, we know you're supportive, but do something to change people's minds. Like, your support is one thing, but like, I need you guys to step up for us. Like, it just only does so much when they give us support and no action.
True.
So I hope we get that more from our congressional representatives from the House and the Senate. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. Of course, McConnell, he was the one who was pushing to end the hemp thing, even though he's one of the ones that helped legalize hemp in the first place. So, it's a whole weird thing, the whole drama over there with those fermenting apples in Congress. So we'll see what happens. And that's all I have for this week, everybody. Thank you so much for watching me. And Erik, thank you again so much for joining me. It was a great episode, some great conversations. And, maybe people can have a different thought process when it comes to cannabis and being a successful person, because, you're proof that, you can be a human being, have all the issues you have, and still be a successful person at the end of the day. So I thank you so much for joining me. Is there anything you want to add before we end the episode today?
No, Chad. But I was all worried on how this was going to go, but man, pretty good conversation. So this was my very first podcast I ever been on, and I appreciate you helping me through this wave. And I've been writing because when I have questions and stuff, I've always reached out to you. Hey, what's going on? And you're following. You put a lot of information out there for people like me to be in the know what's going on. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you having me on your show, man.
Thank you, man. And I appreciate your years-long friendship and mentorship as well, too. So, I really do appreciate that, and look forward to continuing on. And you know what? One day I need to check out your facility over in Grants. I've only been to your shops over in Albuquerque when we have those meetings. So one day I'll make it over to Grants, and maybe we'll go knock on the fence of Bright Green and try to say, hey, where the hell are y'all at?
Well, when I open the consumption lounge here, I'll make sure to send you the invite to the welcome.
I will be there for sure. I love my lounges. So thank you again for joining me, and thank you everybody for tuning in this week. We'll be back next week for another episode of #Grassy Logic. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, whatever you got to do to stay in the know. All right. See ya.